Yes, it is.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart's 2021 Virtual Identity Theft Seminar. We're all very pleased to have you join us here tonight. My name is Jennifer Blanco, and I am the Congressman's congressional aide. So tonight, the Congressman has invited a panel of experts to speak on the topic of identity theft and identity theft prevention. Just wanted to cover a few things before we get started. If everyone can please keep their lines on mute, whether you access the meeting via the Zoom link or if you called in, we ask that you please mute your lines. And if you have any questions, please write them in the chat. If you do not have access to the chat, I will give out my email at the end of the presentation, so you can send me an email with muted, so there's no interruptions or any interference during our call tonight. And again, we will be answering the questions on the chat at the end of all the presentations. Now, without further ado, I would like to welcome Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart of Florida's 25th Congressional District. Congressman?
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much for this and for all you do. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us. I know time is the one thing we never get back, right? But I think this discussion will be very helpful. I'm pleased to host this forum. Let me again in advance thank all of the experts, amazing human beings who will be making presentations for us shortly. Look, this is an issue that I feel very strongly about. The issue of online security. The prevalence of identity theft is frankly startling. It's incredibly common, unfortunately. Now, I'm not an expert on identity theft. However, you might be interested to know that I've been a victim of identity theft, not once, but twice. And it is a horrific feeling to know that someone else has stolen your name, your identity, and they use your information fraudulently. I was very lucky that I was able to catch it early on, frankly, by luck. But some people are not as lucky. And so the frustration from becoming an identity theft victim is frankly overwhelming. I spent months, and I was lucky, trying to get that part of my life together. And it's amazing the damage that they can do to an individual, including some folks that have actually even had issues with the law because of their identity being stolen and bad people doing bad things with their identity. So my goal is that you after tonight will be better prepared than I clearly was to prevent or to deal with identity theft. And as I mentioned in the beginning, that's why I brought together a panel of amazing, just talented human beings, experts on the issue to speak to us today. So you're going to hear 5 presentations from different organizations that deal with this issue on a day-to-day basis. It is my hope that together they will cover important aspects of how to protect oneself from this crime. And upon the conclusion of the presentation, you will have, as Jennifer mentioned, you have the opportunity to ask questions. If you can't get your question in today, feel free to contact us. So I will, one quick caveat is the discussion today. There are a lot of other issues that are out there, but the discussion today has to deal with this issue. We have these 5 practitioners in the field of trying to keep us safe from this issue. So I'm going to ask everybody to keep to the subject matter tonight. So let me tell you who these folks are that I mentioned already twice. First, Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Rebecca Gonzalez Ramos of Miami, and she's with the Homeland Security Investigations. We also will hear from Special Agent Michael Brown, I believe, of the Federal Bureau of Investigations. We will also hear from Public Affairs Specialist Mari Carmen Ortega of the South Florida Area Director's Office for the Social Security Administration. And we also have local taxpayer advocate Teresa Lakoti Bildig of the IRS, of the Internal Revenue Services. And finally, we will also hear from Detective Marcos Rodriguez of the Miami-Dade Police Department, their Economic Crimes Bureau. So again, these are amazingly talented people who work day in, day out to keep us safe from this crime. And I look forward to listening to what they're going to tell us. I will also put my microphone on mute as Jennifer asked everybody to do so as well. So Jennifer, thank you so much. And why don't you take it from here?
Thank you, sir. So tonight we will begin our presentation with Ms. Teresa Lucati-Bildick, the local taxpayer advocate for the Internal Revenue Service. Ms. Lucati?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much, Jennifer. My name is Teresa Lucati-Bildick, and I am the local taxpayer advocate. I am with Taxpayer Advocate Service.
Jennifer, did we lose Teresa?
Ms. Bildick, I think we
Advocate for taxpayers. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
now we
Now
can.
we can.
Okay, sorry, I had a call coming in. I'm on my personal Zoom, and when you have a call coming in, it interrupts everything. My apologies. So what we do with Taxpayer Advocate Service is we are the taxpayer's voice at the IRS, and we help taxpayers resolve issues that they are having with the IRS and that they have been unsuccessful in getting
Ms. Bild?
I'm sorry about that.
Sorry.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we assist taxpayers in getting their issues resolved with the IRS when they have been unsuccessful in resolving it themselves. And one of the things that we assist with is identity theft and fraud detection. And I'm going to have you go to slide number 5. So keep going until you see this one here. Yeah, this one. Perfect. All right. And so identity theft has morphed. It's changed in the last 10 years. And in the beginning, identity thieves were stealing someone's social security number, filing fraudulent returns, getting large refunds, and then the IRS was releasing these refunds, and millions of dollars were going out the door. Well, the IRS identified that there was this huge uptick in identity theft. And so what they did was they created a series of refund fraud filters. And I'm going to get into a little bit more about the refund fraud filters in just a couple of minutes. However, these fraud filters actually protect everyone because they stop anytime the IRS receives a tax return that they feel has potential for being either a fraudulent return and someone's identity has been stolen, they will stop the return based on certain parameters, which I'll get into a little bit later. And these filters stop billions of dollars in improper refunds from going out. And I'm going to reference this slide references the 2019 annual report to Congress, but I'm actually going to read something to you from this year, the 2020 annual report to Congress. And it says that IRS issues most refunds properly, but its pre-refund fraud filters delay millions of legitimate refund claims. In 2020, these filters flagged about 1.9 million returns for identity verification and 3.3 million to verify income and withholding. But the IRS ultimately issued most refunds requested on returns it flagged in calendar year 2019. Taxpayers whose refunds were delayed had trouble getting specific and timely information about the status of their refunds. So what the Taxpayer Advocate Service is recommending is that the IRS continue to work with these filters so that these filters work better and don't stop good returns, that they only stop, the majority of the returns that they stop are fraudulent returns. Let's go to the next slide. And what we are recommending is that the IRS work with Social Security Administration to speed up the transmission of paper W-2 data to earlier in the year. as you know, the PATH Act requires companies to issue W-2s by January 31st. And this helps the IRS when they're issued to Social Security transmits that data to the IRS. And that allows the IRS, when they receive a tax return, they can verify the information against the information that they already received from Social Security. That is one way that the IRS works to verify the information coming in. So we also recommend that the IRS identify acceptable false positive rate and operational false positive rate ranges each year. Basically, what that means is we want to make sure that the IRS is not stopping good returns, that they're stopping, that the majority of returns they stop are the fraudulent ones. And to continue to learn from the returns that were part of each year's process so that every year they perfect the filters more and more. And to increase IRS staffing to improve the processing time for validating information on returns and assigning returns to a compliance stream for further treatment. Next slide, please. Send an interim letter every 60 days to all taxpayers whose returns it is holding in the pre-refund wage verification hold program. And again, I will get into that in just a moment, and revise certain letters to give more information to taxpayers. I don't want to spend too much time on this. Let's go to the next slide. This slide is very interesting because what this slide does is this slide actually shows you two different types of filters, and it's very simplified. It's actually more complicated than it looks, and to me it looks complicated enough. But the IRS basically runs returns through two types of filters. One is identity theft filters, and the other is non-identity theft filters. And so they're looking for fraud. So the identity theft filters are exactly that. They're looking for, is there any possibility that this return was not filed by the correct taxpayer? And the non-identity theft refund fraud is going to look at things like, did they accurately list their income and withholding? Sometimes people make mistakes with their income. They claim a lot more income than the IRS receives information. So for example, maybe what was reported by Social Security is $10,000 in wages, and yet the taxpayer puts $20,000 in wages on their tax return. That would not pass the filter, and that return would not continue processing. The IRS would send a letter to that taxpayer and ask for more information on the $10,000 that was not reported to Social Security. These programs also look at things like the dependent database to detect identity theft. And so that's always an indicator. They look at that because, for example, if a child or a dependent was already claimed on another tax return, that's an indication that there may be fraud involved. And the return review program to detect both ID theft and non-ID theft refund fraud. Next slide, please. So the IRS has a couple of different programs. The first one is the Taxpayer Protection Program. And this is the process where the IRS uses a series of filters to stop certain tax returns it suspects are filed by an identity thief. Again, the IRS will not issue the refund until the taxpayer can verify his or her identity. So they will receive information, a letter from the IRS that indicates they need to verify their identity. The second is the pre-refund wage verification hold program. And this is the process where the IRS uses a series of complex screening filters to detect and prevent tax return fraud. When the return is flagged by this system, the refund is held until the income and withholding information reported on the return can be verified. And sometimes good returns get held up by the pre-refund wage verification hold program. Sometimes small companies don't meet that January 31st deadline and file their W-2s for the year later than that. So if you have a taxpayer who files their return early and the W-2 has not been sent to Social Security yet, or it was just sent to Social Security and Social Security has not had the opportunity to transmit it to the IRS, when the IRS goes to verify the income and withholding, there's going to be a mismatch. And so that return will be flagged and it will be stopped. Next slide, please. And these list the series of, it's a different series of letters that the IRS will issue one of these letters. And so if you have, someone or you yourself received one of these letters, you know that your return is not being processed until you respond to one of these letters, whichever one you receive. So the 5071C is one that is issued when there's potential identity theft during original processing with online option. The 4883C is potential identity theft during original processing. The 5447C, potential identity theft during original processing when there is a foreign address. And the 5747C, potential identity theft during original processing. And this one will be TAC authentication only. So the person who receives this type of letter, the only way they can authenticate their identity is by going to the IRS Taxpayer Assistance Center. And that will require going online and making an appointment. So the IRS online has there's an appointment line that they will have to call. They will have to schedule an appointment, wait for it and show up. And because of COVID-19 and, there aren't as many appointments being given. So it's important that once someone receives this letter that they take action immediately. Next slide, please. And here are a couple more notices. A CP5 notice advising taxpayers that the IRS is holding their refund until they finish reviewing the tax return, or letter 4464C, questionable refund hold. These are more letters that are sent. Next slide, please. Obviously, if your refund is delayed, it's not only going to create anxiety and frustration for you, it's infringing on your taxpayer rights. It's creating an economic burden in many cases, and often result in requests for assistance from the Taxpayer Advocate Service. We have hundreds and hundreds of cases that meet these refund delay in my office alone. Throughout the United States, this is one of the biggest types of cases that we get. We receive hundreds and hundreds of refund delay cases every year. Next slide. So I've been talking about identity theft so much, and what is it? It occurs when someone uses your personal information, such as your name, your social security number, or other identifying information without your permission to commit fraud or other crimes. And of course, when it involves the IRS, it's going to involve your tax return. Next slide, please. And so how would you know if you've been a victim and your tax records have been affected? Well, identity thieves use legitimate taxpayers' identities to file tax returns and claim refunds. They typically file electronically, and they file extremely early in the filing season, because they know that if you file before them, that return is not going to go anywhere. So they have to beat you, and they're going to file as early as possible. If your return is rejected, it may be because a return has already been filed using your Social Security number. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are things to look out for. You may receive an IRS letter inquiring about a suspicious tax return that you didn't file. You may be unable to electronically file your tax return because of a duplicate SSN. You may also receive a tax transcript in the mail that you didn't request. You may receive an IRS notice saying an online account has been created in your name, or that your existing online account has been accessed or disabled when you took no action. You may receive an IRS notice that you owe additional tax, had a refund offset, or have had collection actions taken against you for a year in which you did not file a tax return. Or IRS records indicate you received wages or other income from an employer for whom you did not work. So there are many, many ways that you can be a victim of identity theft. And we have seen to where seniors in nursing homes, their identity has been stolen and tax returns filed, or their Social Security number used to work. And so these are all ways that taxpayers can be a victim of identity theft. There is a new one this year as well. And there have been reports that people have been victims of unemployment-related identity theft. So some people, because of the pandemic last year with identity theft, and many were receiving more in unemployment compensation. So it could be that you were a victim of identity theft and someone just used your information to file for unemployment compensation. So for taxpayers who did not get unemployment compensation, but the state thinks they received it, they need to contact their state. So they would contact the unemployment office for the state of Florida and advise that they did not get unemployment compensation. And it's important to keep all of that information. When you go to file your tax return, do not include any income that you did not get. So if you did not request unemployment compensation, don't put it on your tax return.
Ms.
All right.
Lucati,
Yes.
I think if maybe we can wrap it up in about 2 minutes, the presentation.
Yes. Okay. No
Presentation,
problem.
so we can
Okay.
continue,
Thank
and
you.
then anything else we can send the presentation to the constituents.
Perfect.
Thank
Okay. Then so let's wrap it up with the next slide. This way we can move on. Okay. So if you are a victim of identity theft, respond immediately to any IRS notice you receive. Call the number that is on the notice. You want to complete form 14039, which is the identity theft affidavit. And it would be the best if you got a police report or similar statement. You can always contact the IRS Identity Protection Specialized Unit, and their phone number is there, and report identity theft to the Federal Trade Commission. Next slide, please. This will be the last one. Contact the Social Security Administration, let them know. Contact the fraud departments at one of the major credit bureaus such as Experian, Equifax, or TransUnion. Notify your financial institutions and contact your state tax agency for additional steps to take at the state level. And in Florida, since we don't have any state income tax, that would be Unemployment Compensation Office in case you were a victim of that. And of course, there is always Taxpayer Advocate Service. Please feel free to contact Congressman Diaz-Balart's office, and we work very closely with them. They always submit your inquiries to us, and we help resolve your inquiries. So thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Ms. Teresa Lucati from the IRS for your presentation. So we're just going to go ahead and move through this, and we will be providing the information that she said on our page once the presentation is over. Now we will welcome from the Federal Bureau of Investigation Supervisory Special Agent Michael Brown.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Jennifer, for the invitation. Always look forward to the opportunity to speak with members of the public about this threat and in what I consider a practical approach to prevention. So we'll take a few minutes here to kind of highlight some things, and keeping in mind that we won't get too much into the weeds on some topics, but I will provide the resources for you to dig deeper. And obviously we can discuss those during the question and answer at the end. So to start, the next slide, just as a high level overview of what we're going to discuss here in the next 10 minutes or so, is some ways to stay informed on how your personally identifiable information is being collected and shared publicly, legitimately or illegitimately, and ways to secure your information when possible, recognizing that we all want to take advantage of many of the wonderful opportunities of the internet and the social media to connect with our family and our community. We all have to decide on what level of risk we're willing to take. But I think it's important that we be aware of how our information is being stolen, is being shared to either defraud us and also defraud other people in the community. So we'll discuss those, some of the fraud trends out there, and also some ways for you to report the complaints. And I think if you don't catch anything else from my presentation today, it's gonna, I want to say that the IC3 and what we'll discuss is a great resource for the community, for you to gather additional information about the fraud and also to report your complaints so that you may be able to recover money if you have a loss in one of these incidents. So we'll go to the next slide. And so just a high level here, something to keep in mind on how people get our information. It's not just on the dark web. It's not just stealing your mail. It's all the marketing, all the internet marketing. We put ourselves and our lives and all our information out all the time. So some of the things you can do proactively is to review who has your information, and if you decide to opt out of various mailing lists and publications. So not to promote any particular websites, and I will not mention many, but just to list here, be informed about how your information is being used and shared, even in legitimate business relationships. And so consider opting out of direct marketing, telemarketing, if that is something that you feel is important for you, but just be aware of how your information is being used. Some of the key words here, looking for these databases online, high priority databases, if you want to research this to see ways to opt out of having your information shared. Consider freezing your credit, which would prevent unwanted access to your credit report. Explore any privacy options offered by the state's motor vehicle department. I think it's always worth going to agencies that have a lot of our personal information and are used to verify our identity, to see what you might be able to do to maybe rein in how your information is being shared among agencies or public-private partners. And finally, contacting your home and mobile phone companies to see if they offer privacy options, such as not listing your phone number or caller ID, or allowing you to opt out of sales or phone numbers. So just a few things to think about if you want to rein in, maybe limit your digital footprint. So on the next page, just briefly, I mentioned that obviously we all want to take full advantage of these opportunities online to connect with others. So it's not necessarily practical for us to rein in all of our information. But I think it's very important to consider turning off location services, making sure you restrict your personal information to friends and family, making sure that your friends and family are also doing the same thing. We'll talk about it here in a minute, but one of the ways people do use our ID or our presence online is to steal photos and information from our Facebook pages, Instagram, and then pretending to be you and defrauding other individuals. And so I think as much as they can access that information, you are opening yourself up to being used as what they would call spoofing, where they would use your information and pretend to take on your persona. We'll go to the next page, and we'll talk here for a minute about IC3. And this is a very important report that was just issued for 2020. It has a lot of good detail about the various fraud schemes that are prevalent right now. And so it goes into much more detail than we will here right now. But it also, IC3 is a hub for public information, but it's also a place that law enforcement goes to collect information, share information, so that we can better understand how the community is being targeted and determine how we might be able to attack this from a criminal investigative standpoint. So we use this system to collect complaints. And I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to file a complaint with IC3, because even if it's not in of itself something that ultimately results in a full investigation for a variety of reasons, having that information in the database allows us to identify targets, subjects who are targeting multiple victims across the United States and the world. So that data is extremely important for us in getting any traction in opening and pursuing a criminal investigation. So next page. And also you'll see in the report, there's various figures. You can see just how massive the volume of fraud is related to identity theft. We'll talk about a number of other frauds. Again, identity theft is the core on most of this that we're going to discuss. It is applying it's stealing information, applying it to a number of fraudulent schemes. And so whether someone else's ID is used to defraud you, or your identification is used, or your persona online is used to defraud someone else, this all taps into what I would describe vast but loose network of criminal actors stealing and sharing this information, recycling it over sometimes years of time. So you can see here in 2020, that's the number of complaints, 791,000, around 4.2 billion in losses reported just last year alone to our system. So that's just people that have come forward to report their fraud complaint. The next page, just very briefly, you can see identity theft. They're listed as one of the top complaints coming in, and the associated loss amount around 219 million. But these are all, again, related. They're not separate. These are many of the same actors that are using a stolen ID to commit all sorts of fraud, romance scams, investment fraud, business email compromise, etc. And the next page, the last graph from this report, just as a little bit of perspective, the number of victims here, Florida is very high. On the list of victims filing complaints was IC3 this last year. The loss amount is a little bit lower, but I mean, it's significant. So we're not saying it's low. 200 million to 299 million, just what was reported to the FBI last year. So the next slide, please. So just very briefly, again, the report has a lot more detail, and we can discuss specifics here in a few minutes if you have any questions. But just generally speaking, they fall into a couple different categories. Advanced fee schemes, what I would describe as a stick. These are the telltale IRS imposter scams, grandparent scams, utility scams. Basically, there's a use of intimidation, urgency, demand of payment. This is likely over the phone. And then there's the other type of scam, again, with lottery scams, inheritance, promises of winnings. These are things to lure you into a sense of, basically that you have something that you can gain financially from this transaction. So we'll talk about online email scams. Romance scams is a significant one. Again, your identity may be taken offline and used to defraud another person in the community. Somebody is posing as you to legitimize the transaction, to build a relationship with someone so that they believe that they are real and they send them money or engage with them in other ways over time. So we'll go to the next page. And just some really key things here to think about when, and again, we understand you're actually very proactive members of the community here joining us today. I think something to keep in mind here is that we encourage you to become an advocate for others, to educate your family, friends, to talk to others in the community about what you learn when you research these topics, and help others prevent being defrauded themselves, either exposing their identification to fraud actors or being defrauded by the use of other people's ID. So the key things here, and we're talking about the carrot, things that it's too good to be true, things that you should be, that should raise suspicion to you. When somebody becomes defensive or threatening when you ask questions, that's the stick. That's some of these IRS imposter scams, for instance. And finally, anytime there's a transaction that is requiring gift cards, when otherwise they are trying to legitimize and make it sound like they're from the government and the government agency, that should be a major red flag. And next slide. So we'll talk about, I think one of the most important things is to get someone else's opinion, to slow down and call the agency or whoever they say they're with independently. Take ownership of this. Don't do anything without taking slow and methodical steps to protect yourself going forward. And I mentioned before, we've talked about fraud alerts with the credit reports, being proactive and watching your credit, keeping a very close eye on that information to see if any other address shows up on your account. You can be very proactive in that regard and catch things pretty early if you watch them closely. And finally, IC3, as I mentioned, is our way to collect complaints and to build investigations. Okay, next slide. One other thing you can do is sign up for free scam alerts from FTC. That is a way for you to be proactive to keep an eye on the latest trends, again, for yourself, but also your family and those who may be vulnerable to scams, and also other people in the community if you have various outreach that you participate in your area. Screening your calls, again, we mentioned social media and being responsible. Identifying independently verifying before you reply to anything. So slowing down if something seems either too good to be true or somebody's being threatening, to just take a minute, talk to other people, take your time, research this. And reviewing your bank accounts regularly, your credit reports, and again, like I mentioned, not to be rushed. Next slide, please. So just a list of some of the resources, and I mentioned IC3, obviously, identitytheft.gov, just a lot of good resources here to be educated, to help pass along to others. And we didn't even really talk about money mules, but when we talk about these networks that steal your identification and use it against other victims, oftentimes they recruit people into becoming mules or moving money on their behalf. And so when they steal the money in an investment fraud scheme from an individual, they then move it through a few other victims before taking it into their own bank accounts, whether it's in the US or overseas. So that's a great resource to get more into detail on that. And we'll take some questions here in a bit, but that's what I had to present for today. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Special Agent Brown, for that presentation. Next, we will have from the Homeland Security Investigations, Department of Homeland Security, Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Rebecca Gonzalez Ramos. And if you just allow me one moment, I can get your presentation online, ma'am, since we weren't able to, we had to call in. So just one moment, bear with me. Can you hear us okay, Miss Rebecca?
Yes, I can hear you guys. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
And one moment. Just a moment, the presentation's loading on my end.
It's okay, don't worry. I can start with an introduction.
Absolutely.
First of all, thank you so much, Congressman Diaz-Balart and Jennifer, for inviting us. We love to be part of the community and give them the resources so they can avoid being part of any scams or any type of fraud. As you all know, Homeland Security Investigations is the investigative branch of the Department of Homeland Security. And pretty much our mission is just to investigate everything that posts a threat on our immigration or customs laws. So every person or thing that comes through our border, that's pretty much what we focus on. Today,
Oh.
we're gonna be, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I have the presentation up. Can you see it?
Okay, I see it, but I don't see myself anymore. I don't know if you guys can see me.
All right, yeah, just let me know when you would like for me to move to the next slide. Thank you.
Okay, yes, you can move to the first slide. So tonight what I'm going to be talking about, and I'm going to try to just do it very briefly and keep it very simple so everybody can understand, is the identity and benefit fraud, which is a different type of fraud. And identity and benefit fraud means the type of fraud that people use in immigration benefits. So obviously the goal is to investigate what criminal enterprises are making these types of frauds and address any vulnerabilities that we have seen in our system to reduce the incentives for committing identity and benefit fraud. Next slide. So you can skip that. You can skip to the next slide, because this is the main thing that I want people to be aware of. So there are two types of frauds that relate specifically to immigration. And the first one is the benefit fraud. And this is when anybody or puts any misinformation or information that they knowingly know is not true in any type of immigration document. So this is very important because we see this very often, and a lot of times, not always the individuals know that this is going on, because a very good example of this is an asylum request. So an asylum request a lot of time goes through an asylum attorney, and those attorneys are not always as honest as we would like for them to be. So it's very important that anybody that is paying an attorney for an asylum request, that they know that any misrepresentation or misinformation in that document, when they sign it, it's going to be, they're going to be held responsible for that. So that's very important to keep in mind. Another thing that is important is whenever they are requesting a residency or any type of document that they obtain a benefit, which means an immigration status, it is very important for all the information in that document to be 100% true. That is one type of the benefit fraud. The other type of the fraud is the one with the documents. So here we're talking about driver's licenses. Like a very good example is just a Florida driver's license with your picture on it, but not somebody else's information on it. A passport with your picture on it, but somebody else's information. Usually the way they do this is to get an immigration benefit. So for the driver's license with an individual that has a U.S. citizenship, then that person will be able to access different benefits from the different government entities to gather either living or food benefits or immigration benefits overall. Next slide, please. So that was the type of benefit fraud. It was just passports, driver's license, as I was saying. It is important to know that Florida, and specifically our area, is a very high area for identity and benefit fraud. We have a lot of open investigations investigating the different types of cases. Last year in 2020, HSI arrested over 1,300 individuals nationwide committing identity and benefit fraud. Next slide. So pretty much the same thing. It's just like, and The benefit is just any misrepresentation, anything that is not true in a document. I always like to talk about different investigations that have already been closed and are either acquitted or the individual was sentenced or whatever the end. Can you guys hear me? I'm hearing an echo.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. And some types of these investigations, for example, we had a marriage fraud investigation, and what that entailed was a female that would go, individuals would go to her to get different benefits, and then that female was in charge of just getting everything for them, to include the bride. And that's what we call marriage fraud, is to go ahead and get married with somebody that you're not in a relationship with, just to get an immigration benefit. Next slide. Okay, so a lot of people have different ways to feel about this, but the most important thing that we need to understand is the vulnerabilities that these benefit frauds represent to our country. It's not a matter of immigration benefits just to get benefits. It's a matter of that there are a lot of people that want to be that are enemies of the United States, that want to enter to the United States to do harm. And we need to make sure that we have a strong immigration system without vulnerabilities, and that everybody that is crossing our borders are properly crossing it. Next slide. I'm sorry. So these are the common types of benefit fraud. I mentioned marriage fraud. I mentioned asylum, which are the two that we see the most. Employment-based fraud is just a type of benefit that you just don't have employment authorization to work in the United States, and you're either working without the proper permit to work, or you don't have a real permit. You have somebody else's identity in your employment permit. Next slide. These are type of the document frauds that that we see every day, which is like the most common one that we see in Florida is the driver's license. So it's very important for us to safeguard our birth certificates, social security cards, and that type of information that facilitates others to obtain driver's licenses on our names. Next slide, please. That's what I was talking about, document fraud. It's the manufacturing, counterfeiting, alteration, sale, and or use of identity documents and other fraudulent documents, which are the ones that we just saw. Obviously, unlike benefit fraud, document fraud does not in and of itself confer lawful status upon the perpetrator. Just because you have a driver's license, it needs to have somebody else's, and it's with that driver's license that they go to the Citizenship and Immigration Services and obtain the document that will get them an immigration status. Next slide. The vulnerabilities are pretty much the same in both cases. We just need to make sure that we keep our borders safe from traffickers and alien smugglers, and that we are not facilitating the movement of these within the United States. Next slide, please. These are the type of labs today. It's very digital. We have done seizures of a lot of different printers. They're very technological savvy, and it is hard for us at some point to differentiate between a real Florida driver's license and a fake one. For that, we have a forensic lab in headquarters, and usually we send the documents up there, and then they're the ones that validate if they're real or not. Next slide. So we have, next slide. So what we've done to properly create a strong barrier against document and benefit fraud crimes, we created a task force. And in Florida, there is one in Miami and there is one in Broward. And we're getting ready to open one in West Palm Beach. And then what the task force does is that they work together with different federal and state entities. If we move to the next slide, you will see. And it's just Department of State, CIS, which is Citizenship and Immigration Services, Department of Labor, and all the entities that that are listed in this specific slide. It is very important to work hand in hand with other entities because this is how we get access to the different frauds that are being made. And as working as a task force together, we can address the vulnerabilities that are existent in the different components. So for example, with the Department of State, you know, we can see all the fraud that is being committed for the visa requests. And then with CIS, we can take a look at the asylum requests and any other immigration forms that have been submitted through their system. Next slide, please. What we focus on, so we like our main goal is to prosecute these individuals that are taking advantage of the individuals that are just looking for an immigration status. So these people that are just making a lot of money charging for asylum cases to represent individuals that are just looking how to change their immigration status. And it's kind of sad. We see it a lot in the South Florida area. And it's kind of upsetting that usually these attorneys are from the same country that these individuals are coming from. And they know the law. They're not always attorneys in Florida. They're usually attorneys that are in that went to law school in their particular countries. And they charge a lot of money. And it's important for everybody to know that an asylum request is free. There is no charge for that. So I would just, my suggestion would be before hiring anybody to do your immigration papers or to just facilitate them, I would just make sure that they're not overcharging you, that they're honest, and you can check all that with this with CIS. We try to identify and seize the assets. Last year, we seized over $10 million in identity and benefit fraud. And we work really, really close with CIS in order for us to either, you know, deny a status that was obtained illegally or revoke it. Next slide.
And we're gonna be wrapping up your presentation, Miss, in the next.
That was the last one. I think there's like,
Perfect, thank you.
was that the last one?
Yes, I believe so. The resources. Can you see the slide? Hello, Ms. Gonzalez? Hello, Ms. Gonzalez, can you hear us?
I think her screen froze. So let's go to the next presenter, please.
Okay, all right, well, thank you so much, and we'll get that feedback from her shortly. Next up, we have from the Social Security Administration, Ms. Maria del Carmen Ortega, the Public Affairs Specialist.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Congressman, and the staff for inviting me today. And, you know, I don't have to remind you that Social Security related telephone scams continue to be a pervasive threat. I'm sorry. And we're working very hard to educate the public about these scams. But the average loss in money is around $5,800. So Social Security, together with the Office of Inspector General, came up with National Slam the Scam Day to help, you know, educate the public about all these scams that are going out. You know, the Social Security Administration will never call you telling you that your Social Security number is suspended. We will not make threats or arrest anyone or promises of, telling you, well, if you send me this amount of money, we're going to increase your benefit, or demand secrecy in resolving any problem that you could have with Social Security. So when you receive this type of phone call, the best thing to do is hang up. It's the safest way to avoid getting caught in this scam is simply to hang up. Social Security will never call you on a recorded line. We will always call you if you have something pending with our administration. We'll call you from your local office. A person, will give you their name, an extension that you can call back. And if you still feel that this is not a call from Social Security, we will go ahead and definitely follow up with a letter. We've been trying to reach you, we're pending this, that, and the other, but it's never going to be one of those recorded calls. Not to mention, besides these recorded calls, we also get people telling us that they're receiving emails from Social Security. And if you do have an online Social Security account, you may get an email from us. But one good way of knowing that it's us, it always has to end in GOV. Sometimes people will see socialsecurity.com or socialsecurity.net, and that's definitely not us. It will always be .gov. Also, a lot of people are getting texts from Social Security asking them for money. We will never, ever do anything like that. So immediately when you get a text, if you want to change your name or if you want to your benefits to increase, send me this amount of money, definitely that is a scam, and you need to stay away from that. And in the meantime, while we are after these people and trying to, not have this continue, what you can do for yourself is simply not answer the calls. That is something that at this point, we need your help with. Do not answer those calls. That would be your best bet. I personally know a couple who lost $5,000 in one of these scams. No matter what I said, they still went for it and lost the money. Unfortunately, this is happening way too often, and to the most vulnerable, the elderly population that sees our 1-800 number because they have cloned our number in some instances, and they see this and they will give out the information. And the Social Security Administration will never ask you for your Social Security number. If we were to call you, we already have that information. So asking you all these personal questions and your Social Security number is definitely, a little, it's like, these are not the Social Security Administration, and I should definitely not answer these calls. If you happen to fall into identity theft, one of the first things you need to do is contact the 3 credit bureaus. That's very important. The second thing you need to do is probably create a Social Security online account. And you can do that at our website at socialsecurity.gov. And the good thing about it is once you actually create an online account, no one can create an online account for you with the Social Security Administration. So really, it's actually safer than not having an account. So if this occurs to you, you actually create your account. And if you see that, let's say in 2019, you earned $50,000 and all of a sudden you see that there's 100,000, then somebody must be using your Social Security number to work. And I'm sure that IRS is going to be asking you for more money. So, that's a very good step that you can take in order to know whether they're using your number to work. But if they're using your number for credit purposes and things like that, then you have to contact the 3 credit bureaus even before opening your online account, or you can do it simultaneously. A lot of people that face this situation actually go to the Social Security office and we cannot do anything. unless they have already worked with your number and that's already posted on your record. It already appears on your earnings picture. But remember, we get the wages from that you made last year, this year. So that may take a while. In the meantime, the 3 credit bureaus is the proper step to take to avoid, them, buying a house with your social security number, whatever. So, Slam the Scam Day was the beginning of March, and we do it every year. And, one of the things that while we actually work diligently with the Office of Inspector General, we tell the public, please hang up on these phone scams. Tell your friends, your family, I received this call. Your social security number has been compromised. And sometimes I listen to it because I need to know, is it the same one or a new one? So I do listen to, but the minute you listen to that, hang up. And, let's slam the phone scams together and see that you don't get involved in this theft, identity theft. If you want to know more and report the identity theft, you are to report it to the Office of Inspector General. And their website is oig.ssa.gov scam. So oig.ssa.gov scam. And you can actually report if you are a victim of identity theft. The more reports we get, the more we can actually see where this is coming from. But it's still, going on today, mail, text, and so on. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and stay healthy. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Maria del Carmen. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Ortega. And now we are going to move on to the Miami-Dade Police Department, Detective Marcos Rodriguez. Mr. Rodriguez, can you hear us?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, good afternoon. On behalf of Director Ramirez and Major Holden of the Economic Crime Bureau, I'd like to thank you all for inviting us. I've listened to everyone and all my colleagues, and pretty much my colleagues have all covered pretty much every aspect of every type of crime, how it's handled, who to report to. Just a couple of things I want to add to, not to continue, reiterate everything that everyone has talked to. We also have issues as far as banking institutions, besides Social Security and every other agency. Just to give something to the public to know, banking institutions don't call their patrons and ask them for any information over the telephone. That's another institute. They do not do that as well, like Social Security. So if anyone out there receives any phone calls, like from any banking institution, Florida Power and Light, telephone companies, cable companies, anything like that, when they contact you, they don't ask you for any personal information over the phone. We get a lot of victims where they receive phone calls and they believe it's from one of these entities, one of their providers, and they start asking them for personal information, and unfortunately they start divulging all this information to them, and that's how they also become victims of identity theft because of all the information they provide. So it's something to keep in mind, not only the government agencies but also in the private sector. If you do receive a phone call, or if you receive something from them alerting you of something, it may be an email, it may be a letter, and what they will be advising you is to go out to your local branch or to your local provider of whatever location may be calling you from, and make contact with them personally in order to resolve the problem or look into to see if maybe it's you or someone else that's using the information. As well as, and another thing we need to talk about is the jurisdiction of where a crime is committed. If you do become a victim of identity theft in any of the manners that my colleagues have spoken about, first thing you need to do is contact your local jurisdiction and file a police report with them. Once the police report has been filed, that will be sent to an investigator in the respective police department, and they will be doing any follow-up investigation based on the criteria that each agency has as far as following up information. If you are a victim of identity theft, it's also good to contact the Federal Trade Commission. You could file a report there. What they do is they catalog all the victims of identity theft or any type of fraud related information. And they're like a holding place. That's where we get our information as far as what type of crimes are going up or down or relevant throughout the year. So that would be another location to contact. Like I said, there's not much more I want to add. I don't want to keep reiterating what my colleagues already said. So I will just end it here so we can get this moving. If there's any questions, feel free to answer any questions you may have.
Look,
Thank
I
you so
appreciate,
much.
Jennifer, if I may, so I think we've heard some really, really good recommendations. And let me just throw out a couple of things that hit me, and you, the experts, tell me if this is not, if this is not true. So again, if you get a call, an email, from some entity, whether it's they're saying that it's a government entity or they're saying that it's a private entity, it could be one of your, cable company, your phone company, wherever it may be, Social Security Administration. If you get a call and they're asking for information, don't give information on the phone, right? Just hang up and then call whoever it is, but don't call on the number that they're telling you that, that phone call told you to call back on. Get on the internet, get on the, the old fashioned phone book, find out the actual number of whether it's the phone company, the electric company, whoever it may be, and you call them directly. So, it's really them, and say, hey, I just got a call asking for information. So never give information right when somebody calls you on the phone. Would that be an accurate thing to do, right? The right thing to do, and slow down.
All right.
Does anybody want to kind of touch on that? In other words, I keep hearing over and over again about all these folks that you call. You get a call at your house saying, hey, I'm the Social Security Administration. We want certain information, or I'm Florida Power and Light. I need certain information. And the bottom line is don't send information. Don't give information unless you can first verify that it's that agency that's calling you, correct?
Correct. Correct, definitely. If you have any doubts, for us, just hang up. Or clearly, you can always call our 1-800 number. Our 1-800 number is for incoming calls, but you'll never receive a call from our 1-800 number. Or go to our socialsecurity.gov, and you can actually look up our zip code locator and find the office that services you and get their direct number there. And you can call them. Are you calling me? They'll look you up. And then, you'll know whether it's really us or not. If you can't do that, we most likely, I would say 99.9% of the time, we will always follow up our calls with a letter. Don't go going up on yourself and just, calling the same number and then, giving your information.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So Jennifer, and again, thank you everybody. And I wish we weren't doing this virtually, that we were doing this in person. So Jennifer,
Yes.
can we somehow, I know that I've been watching the chat and there have been questions, and some of the questions have been already answered via the chat, but is there any way that we can maybe take some questions somehow?
Yes, absolutely. So some individuals have been asking questions and some have been answered already. For example, is there a website that you can verify that the lawyers hold a valid license? And that's something that you would be able to check with the American Bar Association, since each state has their own list of verified licenses. Another individual asked, should one suspend or change their social security number if fraud was done and one is not sure it won't happen again? If anybody would like to take that question. And again, it is, should one suspend or change their social security number if a fraud was done, so that it maybe does not happen again? Is that something that individuals can do? I don't know if maybe that's something that Ms. Ortega can answer with regard to the Social Security Administration.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Now we
yes.
can. Now we can.
I'm sorry. Okay, so one of the things is the Social Security does not actually change your Social Security number because of identity theft. There were very, very few instances that your Social Security number actually gets changed. So for the most part, we help you correct this problem, but your Social Security number, I would say 99% of the times will not change. You will still have your same number. So that's why it's very important. A lot of people call the 3 credit bureaus and they put a special PIN or a password to avoid people actually going again and getting your information. But no, for the most part, we do not change your number.
Okay, thank you so much for answering that, Mrs. Ortega. Also, now we have a question in regards to medical providers scanning the driver's licenses into their system, which then might get hacked. Is there any way around that? Because for some instances, hospitals and doctors might refuse a treatment if they don't allow them to scan a driver's license. So do you offer, would anyone like to offer any tips on individuals that go into a doctor's offices and have their ID scanned? And also, a lot of offices might ask for their Social Security number. I'm not sure if they're required to put that information on there or if they can leave that out. So if anybody would like to take that question of scanning driver's licenses.
If I could add something, the problem with medical facilities that we have no control over their rules or regulations. But the reason why they ask for driver's licenses is because we've ran into several instances. We have lots of cases in which victims' identities have been stolen and the identities have been used at the doctor's office in order to get certain type of medical care without without them paying for it and pretty much being charged either to the victim, whether it's Medicare or Medicaid, or being charged to a victim as far as credit cards. So that's why a lot of these medical facilities require a driver's license picture in order to properly identify the person that's receiving the medical care. It all has to do, again, goes back to identity theft. Nothing is sacred when it comes to identity theft. Anywhere where you could apply for credit for any type of procedure is susceptible to identity theft. That's why they ask for the driver's licenses.
Yeah, no, that's why, and as you said, Detective, you don't know if that medical office is doing a great job safeguarding, right, that information. That's one of the risks. And there are some risks, however, that can be avoided, right? And it's particularly these phone calls that you get, letters that you get that are soliciting, phishing for people's identity, and then they will steal your identity. And those are the ones that we as individuals probably have more control in stopping, right? By just slowing down. Don't give out information. Jennifer, let me ask you this, because we're already over time, and I want to be respectful to all of the folks that are on the call, including our amazing public servants. How can folks who have not gotten their questions in, how could, if they have other questions, how do we get those answers to them? You want to talk about that real quick?
Yes, absolutely. So if you do have any questions after now we conclude our phone call, please, you can see up on the screen, I have my email address up. It's jennifer.blanco@mail.house.gov. And I'm just going to spell that out for those that have called in. It's Jennifer, JENNIFER.Blanco, BLANCO @mail.house.gov. So if your question was not answered today, please feel free to email me your question and I will get you in touch with the appropriate individual, or we would try to get that information as well. And something that I just personally seen in the office, constituents have come to us for help, and they have come to us with a letter saying, hey, can you please see if this letter is legitimate? And we sometimes are not able to answer that for them. So we will reach out to an agency just so they can verify if a letter is legitimate. So constituents of ours, if you do have any concerns over whether you're getting phone calls and letters that are legitimate from an agency asking for information, feel free to reach out to our office and we will assist you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And one of the things, let me just leave you all with this. One of the things that I do is if I get a call, and we all get those calls, and it says it's from my bank, I always start with the assumption that it's fake. I always assume that it's a scam, that it's fake. I will not answer. I will not give any information. And then, as we've heard today and multiple times, slow down. And then if it's, if it's a bank, my bank supposedly is calling me, I will not answer. I'll hang up. Then I will call, the bank and say, hey, I've gotten a call. Is it really you? And so I think that's one of the most important things that we can do. And we've heard it time and time again from this group of amazing experts and public servants, is just slow down. Don't give out information. If it's really your bank, if it's really the Social Security Administration, if you hang up on them and you then call them, not the number that they called you from, you look it up and you call them, you'll be able to deal with that. And I would finalize by saying, please remember that we're here to be helpful as well. As Jennifer said, we're not the experts on these things, but we can get you the information, put you in touch with the right people who work day in, day out to protect us from fraud. And so again, Jennifer, if there's nothing else, I know that we're a little bit over time. Let me thank our presenters today for the job that you do. It's a very difficult, challenging job that you all have. We're grateful for your service. We're grateful for the fact that you're there trying to keep us safe every single day. And again, thank you for your time and sharing your expertise with all of us tonight. And with that, Jennifer, unless you want to close us out, and thank each and every one of you for spending this time with us tonight. I hope this has been useful, and this is hopefully a taste of some of the things that we as individuals have to do to keep ourselves, our families safe from identity theft that is so common in our community. Jennifer, you want to close us out?
Yes, Congressman. Thank you so very much, Congressman. And thank you all to all of our speakers from all of the agencies that gave us all this great and useful information. Again, if you have any questions, please send it to my email. It's on the screen at the moment, jennifer.blanco@mail.house.gov. And the presentation is recorded, so it will be available on the Congressman's website for viewing at a later time. And thanks again so very much to everyone that participated on the call today.
Thank you very much. Good night.
And that concludes our identity theft seminar.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.